Card King, here I come. Hello, music fans, music collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to a live special Sunday edition of the Card King Sports and Variety Show. I am your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com. Your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the telephone line, I welcome to the program a legendary guitarist who is known for his work with the iconic rock band, the Scorpions, in the mid-'70s. I welcome in the great Uli John Roth. Uli, honor to have you. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
Absolutely. Now, Uli, it's going to be very hard to fit, your 56-year career in 25 minutes. So I figure we take some snapshots of your career. Very difficult.
Keep it short. Yes.
So 1972, a big year. Scorpions is on tour with UFO, and guitarist Mike Schenker's style of play draws attention to UFO, and he joins UFO, leaving Schenker's spot vacant. And this is where you come in, Uli, right, to finish that tour, and that's how your career manifested with the Scorpions?
Yeah, it was actually 1973, not to be nitpicking, but yeah, summer 73, and that's how it all started. I was 18 years old, and and here I am, still playing after all this time.
Yeah, and so basically, when you got into the band, the Scorpions, mid-'70s, I mean, you really reinvented the Scorpions. You put out some classic rock hits that will live forever, thanks to you being there. Not only, your playing ability when you hear those tracks, which were so powerful, but how was your introduction to the Scorpions? Did you get along with with all the band members when you first got there?
Well, no, it was slightly different. The Scorpions, after Michael Schenker left, they kind of broke up. They didn't exist anymore. It was really just Rudolph, and there were a couple. There was still a gig to be done. He asked me, "Can you do that gig?" And I did, but then there was no more Scorpions. I had a band called Don Road, a four-piece, and in the summer, Rudolph started coming to our rehearsals, and we hit it off, and so he kind of joined Don Road. But then I said, well, what about Klaus Meine? Shouldn't we get him back? So Klaus Meine came to the rehearsals. He liked what he heard and saw. And Scorpions already were an established act, and they had a record contract. So it was a no-brainer. We called it Scorpions, but it was literally four members of my band and two old ex-Scorpions. And then, so we were six people in the beginning with a keyboard player. And that's how it started, that's how the journey started. And then we put out an album every year, and we toured a lot, all over Europe and finally Japan. And, that was the story.
And you did put out a lot of albums, and tell me if I get these years correctly, because I'm following chronological data.
In my time, we did 5.
Right, and then it began with that killer album, if I believe 1974, if I got the year right, "Fly to the Rainbow," which was released, correct?
Correct. That was the first one. That was recorded in April of '74, and then the second one was exactly a year later. It was called "In Trance."
Right.
And then the next year, '76, we did "Virgin Killer." Then we did "Taken by Force" in the year after, and the final one was a live double album called "Tokyo Tapes" in 1978.
I mean, amazing tracks that will live forever, no question. Now, getting back to "Fly to the Rainbow," when you first heard the sound, I'm not sure if this is correct, I may have heard this in one of your past interviews, didn't you feel that the guitar sound was terrible at first when you first heard it?
Oh no. It was only that in the studio, I wasn't happy with the sound of the studio. You know, the guitar. I was used to a more open guitar sound. That was all. But on the album, it turned out fine in the end. You know, I thought it could have been done better, but that's irrelevant. You know, so that's a misconception.
Yeah, and the track "They Need a Million." I mean, no one does this better than yourself, Uli. When I'm listening to you, I mean, you keep us listeners on your toes, on our toes. I mean, you keep us on our toes because I mean, the melody, the song starts off with a soft melody in the beginning, and then and then it kicks into an explosive guitar performance by you, and this is where no one does this better. I mean, you change the pace of the songs like no other guitarist I've heard of.
I don't know. Maybe there was a certain sense of drama, but that particular track, I just, it had like a Spanish kind of groove, a Spanish rhythm, fast, almost like a flamenco thing. And I just tried to do this in a very melodic way. But yeah, as you said, explosive. I guess there's that as well.
I mean, explosive.
Don't forget, I was 18, lots of adrenaline in the can. And yeah. It's got to come out somewhere, and mine came out through the fretboard,
I mean, no doubt about it. Now, also the track Drifting Sun, which shows another part of your talent, this is where you get the credit for writing, right? You wrote this hard rock ballad.
Yeah, I wrote that one. Yeah, that was one of my first. In fact, I think it was the first one I wrote for the Scorpions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, this song has your signature all over it. This is, like I said, this is a track that you wrote. Was it difficult getting into the writing process? Do you like the writing process, or you like the playing, the playing process?
No, it wasn't difficult. It was quite natural. I was not an experienced songwriter by that time. I had written a few things for Dawn Road. But in the beginning, my heart was more in guitar playing, and the songwriting was almost an afterthought. But in the Scorpions, I started writing more and more. So in the beginning, there were only a few pieces on the first album. But then I had more output, and by the time of Virgin Killer, I pretty much wrote half of the material, I would say, The other was written by Rudolph and Klaus, who were an extremely strong songwriting team. But they were completely different from me, and I guess that was kind of a very unusual and interesting package,
We're talking with the legendary guitarist Uli John Roth, who's with us of the Scorpions. Now, Uli, this is the track "Fly People Fly." Again, this is where your diversity really shocks us. I mean, this is like a blues rock mastery. Here you're playing blues rock, and it really lifts this song to life. I mean, you give these tracks life and presence by you performing them. Again, your blues rock style. How did you learn that type of style on the guitar?
Now, don't forget, that particular track was written by Michael Schenker. He wrote that while he was still in the band, and we picked up on it, So I followed his lead on that one. But we had very similar influences, I learned from the best. Learned from Jimi Hendrix, from Eric Clapton, all the best people who were around then. And it was a certain language that was, musical language that was developing in these years. And all of these people like, Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, they all contributed to that language, which persists to today. Literally every guitar player you hear you find roots of what these people came up with in the early days, even when they're not aware of it. But since I've been there pretty much from almost the beginning of that journey, I've seen it all, so I can tell very much, where these things came from and who started the ball rolling. So I can say, okay, that's a typical Jimmy influence. Here's some Clapton, and and I can say that about myself too, because in the early 70s, I was one of these people who came up with that stuff, and that's it.
And like you mentioned, Uli. I mean, you were there in the 70s and 80s, where you had so many iconic guitarists. And I often wonder, like in my business here in the radio, it's very competitive. Did you have like a lot of jealousy around you? Like, did you have a rival that during those times of your heyday?
No, none whatsoever. That was a very peaceful time. It wasn't about rivalry. If somebody was a great guitar player like Michael, I was aware of his quote-unquote greatness. I knew him since he was a kid, and I totally respected him, and I think the feeling was mutual. So there weren't really many others in Germany that they were pushing the envelope, but in England there were, but no rivalry. I've never, I didn't experience any of that. Maybe later with bands in America when there, maybe some guitar players were competing for the top position. I wasn't one of them. I just did my thing, and there were not many people doing, and in fact, I think there was nobody doing what I did in Germany, so I don't think I had any competition. Michael was doing different things, and he was in London. So, I felt pretty much on my own in that field at that time.
You're right. I mean, I would say no one was doing what you were doing in Germany, which really you left a mark in that country. But you're right. It must be an American thing.
That's where we started.
What was that?
I said that. Well, that's where we started. That's where our base was. We started touring in France, England, and then eventually like Scandinavia, all these countries. But Germany was our powerhouse, our main base initially.
Now, also, on the album In Trance, the track "Living and Dying" on that album, I heard some music enthusiasts say that arguably that can be your best work and magic with the guitar. Would you say that's correct, or which track you feel is your best work?
Well, I personally don't see it like that. I never thought that much about that particular track, and I wouldn't think it's one of my better efforts, but some people might disagree. You see, if everybody has a different taste, and to me that was never one that I was particularly proud of as an achievement. Other songs on that album I would prefer guitar-wise, but hey, if somebody says that, fine with me. Everybody has a different perspective.
Right, and then we fast forward a little bit to Virgin Killer, which was released in '76, I believe, and that was a mighty album. It had a big following in Japan, correct?
Mm-hmm. It was the first gold album for the Scorpions was Virgin Killer, which went gold in Japan. And that's what enabled us to go to Japan. And a year later, it did better than Taken by Force in Japan. And, so that's why we were able to do this tour.
Right. It had a big following in Japan and also, in the European countries. But for some reason, America was slow picking up that album for some reason, right, during that time?
Well, not just that album, but, there were various reasons. It was very much a political constellation. We were with RCA at that time, which was a worldwide record company, big record company. RCA Europe was very supportive of our efforts, but the head of RCA America, a very nice gentleman, on the name of, I think his name was Bob Summer or something like that. So I've met him. But he really thought that the album cover of Virgin Killer was absolutely atrocious, which it was. And so he didn't support it at all. And we never made it to America in my time because there was no support from RCA America for that reason. But having said that, there was a grassroots following started to grow. People like Van Halen, when they were not famous yet, they started covering our songs. And particularly the Virgin Killer stuff, like Catch Your Train, etc., and played them live, and people caught on, So it was only a question of time. And sure enough, just briefly before I left, we were offered an American tour, but I had decided not to do that, With hindsight, that was probably a mistake. I should have done the very first American tour of the Scorpions, but I didn't. And so that's that story, Now you know why it took longer in the States. It was record company politics.
And during that Virgin Killer, wasn't there like a Paul Stanley story with that piece of work?
Yes, there was.
Tell us about it.
The album title, Virgin Killer, came to be because Kiss did their first tour of Germany. We didn't know who they were, but they already drew quite a crowd, 2,000 or 3,000 people even back then. And Paul Stanley actually requested us to be their support act. So he liked Entrance because by that time Virgin Killer had not been released yet. So, okay, here we were supporting Kiss, and it was quite an experience. I personally didn't quite know what to make of it. I remember I was in the elevator one day, going up to the gig in one of these halls, and suddenly this monster was right next to me. It was Gene Simmons with his very high heels, looking down on me. It was really funny. And then I saw him spitting all this blood on stage, which I thought was ridiculous and yucky, but a lot of people thought it was great, and you see the humorous side of things. We had quite a few stories there on that tour. But, cut a long story short, afterwards, in one of the rehearsals, I was kind of, jokingly making a little bit of a Kiss impersonation. So I just played a riff, and I sang the stupidest thing that came into my mind, or not the stupidest, but something that could have been like Kiss. And I said, because he's a Virgin Killer. I don't know where that came from, but I was just doing a Kiss, paraphrase. And then Klaus Meine, I think, said, wow, that's cool, do that again. And then I had to do a song with it, and then I had to write lyrics that were kind of not embarrassing or meaningful lyrics, which I did, and which wasn't that easy, But that's the story of how Virgin Killer came about, and yeah. Anyway.
Now you probably get tired of asking this question, but my audience may not know. So the part when you left the Scorpions, what happened? I know you were pursuing other work. You had other interests at the time.
Yeah, no, the thing was, by the end, after 5 years, which were great, I loved being in that band, there was no problems, but I started writing stuff that really was not compatible. I started writing symphonic instrumentals, 10-minute long pieces, complex. None of that fit into the Scorpions framework, and when that happened, I knew my time was up. So I said, guys, I love you and leave you. I need to go, And that's what I did. I formed my own band, Electric Sun, and we recorded 3 albums. And we toured the States also in '85. Yeah, so that was that story.
And as you know, Uli, the "Rock You Like a Hurricane" that's considered the signature song. Did it ever did it ever bother you that you weren't involved in that production?
Well, I can't stand the lyrics,
Really?
but I think it's a great classic rock riff. I mean that's really. Quite something to write a riff like that. It's unforgettable. So yeah, bravo, Rudolph.
So so if you were present, involved with that work, would you have tweaked anything or changed anything? Rock You Like a Hurricane?
I wouldn't have. I mean, the title, of course, is great, but I wouldn't have liked the lyrics. But regarding the guitar lead, I think I would have played a guitar lead which supports the song. I never did anything that destroyed Rudolph's songs. On the contrary, I think we gelled very well. Had I stayed in the band, I would have, of course, played something that fits those songs. Absolutely.
Interesting. So you feel "Rock You Like a Hurricane" could have had a better guitar lead?
I didn't say that. I would have played it differently. That's all.
Different.
Right. Yeah,
yep.
I would have played it differently because Matthias is Matthias, and I'm who I am, and we think differently. So I'm sure I would have done a different lead. But the song lives because of the riff, and the vocals, not because of the guitar lead. The guitar lead in that song wouldn't have been so important, really. I would have done my best or tried to do my best, but the riff, we would have played the riff just as it is, because it's perfect. Wouldn't change anything there.
It's interesting, and I have a couple of minutes left. I want to get a couple of more. I often wonder, Uli, during your years after I know you were doing other work and doing other things. When you left the Scorpions, was there ever a group, that you wished you would have been part of after you left the Scorpions? That wish, they would have called you, or that you had, interest in working with?
Not really. It's not that I mean, yeah, I liked other bands. I loved Yes, and several bands, but no, I wanted to do my own thing. I was quite happy being a solo artist, and that's that,
Now, I want to mention your website. It's ujr.info, Uli John Roth.
It's basically ulijohnroth.com,
Okay. Yep, and I see you have tour dates. So what's in the on the pipeline for you moving forward?
Well, we're doing a big North American tour in April and May, going all over the place with something called Interstellar Sky Guitar. And what that is, it's actually a dual program, playing 2 programs in one evening. 3-hour show with an intermission. And the reason why it's 2 shows in one is because before COVID, I had booked 70 dates for North America with a solo show where I'm just on stage with the screen playing solo, having the orchestra on the screen, doing all sorts of things. But because of COVID, that got canceled. So 4 years later now, I thought it would be nice to pick that idea up again, but I also wanted to bring the band. So the second half of the show is a full rock set. We were doing mainly my early material, like Scorpions, Electric Sun, a little bit of Hendrix.
So you'll be on tour soon, and those dates we can catch on your website, right, Uli?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're also doing a teaching seminar, Sky Academy in Long Beach, just before, over the Easter period. And every night in the venues, in the afternoon, I'm doing a guitar seminar, which is called The Sky's the Limit. So it's I'm bringing quite a circus to town.
And I have like 30
people would be sick of me, but there you go.
and I have 30 seconds. I want to end it with this. I recently read, I know this is alternative rock, but I read that the Smashing Pumpkins, they were looking for a guitarist. If any of these bands like the Smashing Pumpkins reach out to you, or who knows, Whitesnake, Def Leppard, and they ask you to play with them, would you go for it?
That's very questionable. I love Billy Corgan, and I really like playing with them, but it's his band, and I prefer to be where I am in my own outfit. It's maybe not as big on the worldwide scene, but at least I can do what I like, and nothing but. So. Yeah, you're talking to the guy who left the Scorpions, don't forget.
Well, listen, I really appreciate
it. Than that.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, that's what I said. Everything's good.
All right, listen, I really appreciate your time. Great job today. I appreciate it.
Cool. You're welcome.
Take care, Uli.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. The great Uli John Roth, former Scorpions. Until next week, happy collecting to all.